Hi, welcome to the Professor Knits podcast. I'm Nikki and I'm the professor who knits. Today is episode 6 of the Professor Knits, and I'll be talking about knitting, spinning, and a little bit of dyeing yarn. We'll see. If you're interested in following me on social media, I'll put my information here, and otherwise let's get right to it. So I have some big news. My husband and I and our 2 little children, we have moved across the country and have moved to Knoxville in East Tennessee. So this is very exciting, and it's happened since the last time I podcast. And this is a move that we kind of expected to make. We didn't know when we were going to make it. There was a while that it wasn't going to happen. We just weren't too sure. And then suddenly it happened, and it happened very quickly. So we are here because this is my husband's sort of base of operations for his job. And we've lived here before. We actually met here. I lived in Knoxville for 6 years before moving to South Dakota. So we are already very familiar with the city. We've got a good friendships here, a lot of friends and networks. And I used to teach at the University of Tennessee, so I know a lot of people here, and I'm on sabbatical from my job. So it's very exciting. We're very happy to be here. Knoxville is a city that's very near and dear to my heart, and it was nice coming back to our house that we have here. But it was pretty stressful moving, let me tell you, because I've mentioned in previous podcasts that we were renovating our house in South Dakota. But we were taking our time with it. It's a very big house. It's an old character home, just about 3,000 square feet. But it needed a lot of work. And we were just kind of taking our time with it. And I'm not talking about a fresh coat of paint and new carpet. I'm talking about renovations, tearing down walls, redoing plumbing, tearing down ceilings, fixing plaster walls, electrical, you name it. We were overhauling this house, but we're really taking our time with it. And we're doing it ourselves. So when it appeared that we had to make this move, I kind of looked around, and it's amazing what you can get used to in life. Because I've been living in this house for several years, and it's been fine. It's a great house. But then you look around, and I was thinking, okay, we have to find tenants to move in here. I cannot ask anybody to pay to live here. Our electrical, in some of the rooms, light bulbs were dangling on wires. A lot of the cosmetic type stuff still hadn't been done. We still needed to retile some floors. So it was, we realized that we had like 4 weeks to finish our renovations. So we really worked hard. Plus packed up a house and moved across the country with 2 little kids. So things have been pretty stressful. So I haven't gotten a whole lot of crafting done. And there was sort of an epic meltdown at one point with some frogging that happened, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. But I do have one finished object. Oh, so anyways, that's my big news. I now live in East Tennessee for at least the next year, and I love it here. It's one of the most beautiful places in the U.S. We're avid hikers and campers, and now we've got, and I don't mean glamping, I mean tent camping, right? We really enjoy backcountry camping where you have to hike in, but now with 2 little kids, we can't really do that. Although Oscar, my son, he could probably handle maybe a short trip in, but not our young daughter. We always joke that as soon as they're old enough to carry their own water, we're taking them on backcountry camps. So we love to go camping, and so there's a lot of great, fantastic camping and hiking out in the Smoky Mountains. So we're really looking forward to that. Anyway, my first finished object, actually my only finished object this week, are my June socks. I've shown you them before. Toe up, 2 at a time, basic vanilla sock on this self-striping sock yarn by Hanson Hand Dyes. And I sent out the SOS asking my viewers how to avoid a situation like this with self-striping yarn, and you all answered. Well, not all of you, but Some of you answered. And so the afterthought heel is definitely going to be something that I'm going to try the next time I pick up some kind of self-striping yarn. So yeah, that's all I have for a finished object. My Lush cardigan has been hibernating for quite some time. I am going to pull it out and show it today, even though it's not finished yet, simply because it's been a while. So if I have any new viewers, fingers crossed, you'll see this Lush cardigan that I'm working on for Tin Can Knits. Now it is 99% done in this beautiful purple Breathless DK weight Shalimar yarns in the Byzantium colorway. I've got a pretty amateur gig happening here, so my camera and lights aren't very professional. So I hope you can see this dark purpley color. I love knitting it, and it's almost done, but I still have to do the button band, and the reason why it's taking so long is because I didn't have any buttons. So the first thing I did when I arrived in Knoxville was I hit the local yarn stores, and I picked up a really nice subtle button to go with this cardigan. If you can see, it's pretty much identical in color. Plus it has that bit of mother of pearl sheen to it. So it'll be a very subtle, it won't draw any attention away from the sweater to the button, just a basic button. So it's time to finally put this cardigan to bed. And I think the reason why, aside from not having the buttons, and where I was, I couldn't, there was no place for me to buy good buttons where I lived in South Dakota. And I don't like to purchase something like this online without touching it and feeling it and seeing what it's like for buttons anyway. But another reason why I think it's been hibernating, is because with all of the house renovations, packing up, so the physical aspect of moving, but also just the intellectual, mental stress of having to do address changes and set up utilities and find a renter and have our renters here in Knoxville move out and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't want anything complicated, and doing this cardigan was not complicated, but I've never done a button band before. So I just stuck with straightforward vanilla socks, finishing up my June socks during the epic move. Well, I did a few more things, as you'll see. So this has to get done. I love this sweater so much, and let's face it, it's already almost, it's August 10th today as I'm filming this, so it's time to start thinking about fall. It's going to start getting chillier in the next 6 to 8 weeks, so I need to get this finished. My second work in progress is, what should I show you next? I'm knitting. If you recall from my last podcast, I opened up my Euroflax linen yarn that had arrived in the mail, and I opened it up on the podcast, and I was very happy and excited. It's this beautiful navy color, 100% linen, that was on sale on yarn.com. And so I wanted to make a summer tank top to wear. And I chose a pattern by Shibui Knits. Shelly Anderson is the designer, Shelly Anderson, and the tank top was the slope tank top. So this very understated classic design that I'll post here that has some really nice gentle shaping where the front is shorter than the back, and the back is a little bit longer. And I actually had knit quite a bit on this particular project, and I had gotten as far up to the underarms, because it's knit from the bottom up, to the underarms. And I realized at that point, so that was already two full skeins into the project, I was 40 stitches off the stitch count. I was pretty upset, as you can imagine. I'm rather busty, and so 40 stitches too small, especially in that area, is not gonna fly. Now, this is what you have to understand about my husband and I and our home renovations. Because we're doing it all ourselves, it's a lot of physical. I'm not just switching gears out of the blue. I am going somewhere with this. a lot of physical labor. Like at some points, we were lifting up 12-foot sheets of drywall above our shoulders to redo our ceiling in our kitchen. And I was helping my husband. We didn't rent a drywall lift or anything like that. I'm talking about like some pretty hard physical labor, up and down ladders, a lot of just above the shoulders, above the head work, patching and repairing plaster, which, dremeling cracks and patching them and sanding them and painting them. It's hard on your body and especially on your hands. And the only thing that would really take the pain away was a good shot of whiskey in the evening. Right? Advil in the morning, because we'd wake up in the morning just so stiff and sore, and we'd have some Advil. But in the evening, after a full day of this kind of physical labor and starting to feel the aches and pains, we would have some shots of whiskey. Well, I had already had a couple of shots of whiskey, maybe just one, maybe one and a half. And I was pretty upset that I was 40 stitches off, and I thought it's probably because I've been drinking whiskey every night and wine to unwind that I made this mistake, and so I tore it out, and it was several hours, probably 10 or 12 hours worth of knitting that I tore out. And I think I realized what I had done wrong when I was shaping the bottom of the tank top. In these short rows, you wrap and you turn, right? Pretty straightforward way of shaping. And I was so used to doing the wrap and turn in socks and then closing up the heel and gusset flap in socks, where when you do your wrap and turn, and then when you knit back or purl back to it, in order to close up the heel, you knit or purl that wrapped stitch with the next stitch, and that's how you close up your heel, right? And I think that's what I was doing in the short rows for this particular tank top, is I was so used to doing that for closing up heels that I just automatically did it in the wrap and turn short rows. So I was pretty upset, and I tore it all out. And then I pulled out my shine shawl. If you all remember, I was doing a shine shawl. And I wasn't very far into it. I had only worked on this particular project altogether for maybe 2 hours. So I wasn't very far into it, and I was enjoying the pattern. But one thing that was happening in this particular pattern is when you did the turn, there was no wrap or anything. And when you did the turn, it left quite a big hole every time you turn, and you do a lot of turns. And I knew that this was happening because other people had commented on these holes that were being left behind in the project, but it didn't seem to bother anybody, and I was certain it wasn't going to bother me, and I thought it might just end up being a nice eyelet-looking lacy detail to the shawl. It really bothered me, and I think it was the combination of my gauge, the fact that it was in garter stitch, and the type of yarn I was using, perhaps. It just looked like I kept making a mistake and that I was dropping stitches. So I took another shot of whiskey and then I frogged that one too in the same night. I was not a happy camper. I felt like my knitting mojo had deserted me. My hands were so sore, and anyways. The next morning I did have a little bit of frogger's remorse. I thought that I could have maybe figured out how to salvage the tank top anyway, but I moved on. I got over it. So that was my whiskey-fueled Frogapalooza, if there ever was one. Anyways, since then, I have recast on the slope tank top. So once we got to Knoxville, when we were packing up, I tried very hard to make sure I kept my yarn packed separately, and so I could just put it in my car rather than have the boxes of yarn end up in the moving truck. But some did find their way into the truck. But I eventually found, as we were unpacking, I eventually found my linen yarn again, and I recast it on, and I'm knitting it again because it's such a beautiful pattern, and I think just a really beautiful garment. So I got through the shaping without making that mistake, as you can see. And I am now decreasing up through the body up to get up to the underarms. And every couple of rounds, I count my stitches and make sure I'm not messing up. And I'm knitting them on my carbons, size 3 carbons. And I think I need to switch up needles to something with a little bit of grab. I'm not a huge fan of knitting with linen. I love linen, the fabric, and I look forward to wearing this. But it's not that fun to work on. It's so hard and crunchy. Although I will say this particular yarn has softened up because it's the second time it's been knit. So hopefully I'll get this wrapped up soon. It's a fairly straightforward knit at this point, and I'll have a chance to wear it before the weather starts to get cool. I can't believe I'm saying that. I mean, it is August, and this is Knoxville, where the warm weather will stay right through September. But yeah, I will get some wear out of this year. I think I'll try to always knit at least one linen garment every summer. But like I said, it's just, when you get used to knitting with merinos or llama or alpaca, it's a tough thing to work on, especially when my hands were so sore from all of the labor. I mean, my knuckles are still a little swollen and my cuticles are shot. The rest of my body is recovered. I don't need the whiskey every night anymore, or the Advil for that matter. Now it's just optional, not a necessity. So yeah. So my second work in progress, I've got the Lush cardigan, I've got the Slope tank top, and of course I have my July socks that I cast on, and I haven't finished them yet, even though it's almost the middle of August, but they're almost done. Now, what I chose was the Mercury sock by Kim McKenzie, I think. I'm pretty sure that's her name. And I adore it. Now, I've got one finished, and this is unusual for me to not be doing two at a time. But this is my first time doing a sock with a pattern, and I thought I'd better be careful and pay attention and do one at a time. Plus, pardon me, it's a cuff down. And I prefer doing toe up, but I much prefer this cuff for top down. So I've got one finished, and I'm very happy that this is the yarn that I did have in the Shine shawl. And I think I made the right choice by frogging that particular project. I would like to knit that shawl, but if and when, probably when, I do decide to knit it, I'm going to not follow the pattern for the turns and do some sort of wrap and turn or German short row or something so that those holes don't appear. Again, I'm not criticizing the pattern. It's just my personal preference. So anyways, Mercury sock, love it. I think this particular yarn that I decided to take from the Shine project is perfect for this sock. I just think it looks so beautiful. I'm very excited about it. The second sock, I'm just in the process of turning the heel. And I'm knitting this on, of course, my Addy Sock Rockets 2.25 millimeter. And I'll get these finished hopefully soon so I can get my August sock cast on. I'm doing a sock club, one sock a month club, but I haven't joined an actual club. It's just in my mind. So those are my 3 works in progress. 2 of them very close to being finished. So I don't have a shawl cast on, and I really, really need to get one on because I like to have one. So I'm going to pick something probably later today and maybe cast it on later today. 4 projects on the go. How gluttonous of me. Okay, so next segment, spinning. I pretty much missed Tour de Fleece because of the house renos and everything. So I was kind of disappointed. I did do a little bit of spinning. I got the Corriedale spun up that I showed you guys the roving on the last episode. So I got the Corriedale in this natural brown color, spun up, plied, and ready to go. I really like this fabric, or this fiber. It's got a little bit of bite and scratch to it, but it's a nice rustic yarn. And I think I'll probably, I don't know if I'll make mitts with it. Maybe a hat. Not a cowl. I think it might be too scratchy for the neck. But I really enjoyed it. I liked spinning Corriedale, I will say. I also spun up some baby llama plied it, one of my 4-ounce tops, but I don't have it handy. And it's still sitting on the bobbin for a while because I've read that when you ply a fiber, you should let it sit on the bobbin for a couple of days to help set the twist. You still have to wash it and set the twist with water, but it's supposed to help it more. So I'll show that llama to you on the next episode. So not a lot of spinning, but I'm going to make up for it. And that brings me to stash enhancements. Sticking with spinning, look what I just bought. It's like this, it's bigger than my head. I do have a bit of a peanut head, kind of a small head, but this is a pound of merino roving that I just picked up at one of my local yarn stores today. She's called Loopville here in Knoxville. There's two good local yarn stores here in Knoxville. One is Loopville, the other one is the Yarn Haven. I like to patronize both as much as I can now that I'm here, and before when I used to live here. So I picked this up. I saw it sitting there. It was the only one, and I think it was basically just for decoration. And I asked, "Can I buy it?" And she said, "Sure." And it was good, you know, $3 an ounce. You can't go wrong. And so I'm looking forward to doing some dyeing and spinning. So I'm going to make up for the tour de fleece that I missed. I just love it. I'm telling you. Merino. It's very, very nice and soft. All right. What are my other acquisitions? Well, I'm supposed to be on a yarn diet. And that was easy in, you know, small town South Dakota where the closest yarn shop was 40 or 50 miles away. Not so easy here in Knoxville when I can get to two fantastic yarn stores very easily. So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the first things I did when I arrived in Knoxville was hit the yarn stores. And I went to the Yarn Haven, and lo and behold, I walk in the door, and what do I see? But she now, and it's been 3 years since I've lived in Knoxville, so I didn't know, she now carries hedgehog fibers. So I decided to pick up a skein. This is really hot to trot yarn right now. Everybody talks about it, everybody buys it, everybody raves about it. So I thought, okay, I don't want to always just jump on trendy bandwagons, but I'll give it a shot. So I picked up the 90% superwash. Oops. 90% superwash merino, 10% nylon in the fingering weight, obviously, in the artifact colorway. I figured that it's going to be the most versatile for matching up a color. I'm thinking maybe matching it with a gray or a pink to do a nice shawl because it's nice and soft, so it'll be nice to have it around the neck. So let's see what the big deal is. I'm not sure if the big deal is the colorways that she produces or if it's the yarn itself and how it knits up. We'll see. We'll see what all the fuss is about. My next acquisition, again at the Yarn Haven the same day, was Blue Moon Fiber Arts Socks That Rock, 100% superwash merino in the Sugar Pie colorway. And I tell you, I just adore the way this feels already. I was happy also to see that the Yarn Haven, at least compared to 3 years ago, has a lot of indie dyer yarn for sale now. And this is a very generous skein. It's 146 grams. But that's interesting. It's 146 grams, but only 405 yards. That seems weird to me. 5.15 ounces. Anyways, loved it. Looking forward to knitting something up with it again, probably something around for the neck. I'm thinking about jumping on the brioche bandwagon. That's all the rage right now. And maybe I'll do a brioche cowl, the brioche for beginners cowl. Maybe I'll do that in this. So I get that variegation, but I'm only working with one color. We'll see. I think it's quite pretty though. And then at that same store on that same day, I picked up some sock yarn. The Jawal Superwash Lang self-striping sock. I'm sorry if I seem a little distracted, but the label is right over top, and I'm not sure if I'm getting all the information. The store label is over top of the yarn label. Lang Yarns Jowl Superwash. I guess that doesn't have a colorway. It's just a number. Anyway, bear with me here. It is the kind of sock yarn that is self-patterning, which I feel like is one big fat cheat. But I'm going to do it anyway for portability. You know, I'll take this with me sort of as in my purse. I don't know if this will be one of my month socks. It just feels like too much of a cheat. I think it's going to be an extra pair of socks that I do that's always with me for when I'm like, you know, waiting in line or whatever. That takes no thought because the yarn does all of the work for you. Right? I clearly was into pink that day, right? Although the artifact has a definite pink hue to it, but it's not just pink. So that was my Yarn Haven purchase. Then I just feel like a pig, all the stuff I have. Then today, just this morning, I met my lovely friend Meredith for a little knit date. Because the great thing about Knoxville is not only do I have a lot of friends here and good connections at the university because I used to work here, but I've got knitting friends. Well, see, Meredith and I were friends first, and then we both became very avid knitters. In fact, I taught Meredith how to knit, and then the student, surpassed the teacher. She's a much better knitter and does wonderful garments. But anyways, hi Meredith, if you're watching, I did confess to you this morning that I have a podcast. I'm assuming you're not going to watch though. But anyways, it's her birthday today, and she and I met for a knit date for breakfast, and it was like it was my birthday because she gifted me some beautiful yarn that she picked up when she was in Paris. She was in Paris for about a month earlier in the spring. And she bought me some beautiful skeins. I bagged myself a Rohrspot, I don't know how to say this one. It's such a beautiful yarn. The Woolmise, I know most people just call it Woolmise. Rohrspot and Woolmise. Look at this. Isn't this gorgeous? It's the 80% wool, 20% polyamide, so presumably nylon or some sort of synthetic fiber. I thought it looked like candy. You know those, when you buy it, you can get those lollipops that are actually just, sorry, I think I'm going to have to edit that one out. That got almost X-rated. It's a lollipop, but it's just a long stick, and it's bumpy, and it's in different colors. That's what this reminds me of. I'm going to keep this family friendly. I'm not going to start simulating. Anyways, that's what it reminded me of. She thought it looked like a bird, which is also true. Maybe a nice, beautiful toucan or parrot or of some kind. But I'm so excited because I'm going to London in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to getting something like the Woolmise yarn that's just not that easily found here in the US. And she surprised me with one, so I'm very, very excited. This will definitely have to be some sort of cowl or scarf. You can't put this on your feet. You got to have this on display, right? So thank you, Meredith. But that wasn't all. She also got me some beautiful, and this one kind of has a woodsy smell. Sorry, I should be smelling all the yarn. This one just smells like yarn. Those ones all kind of smell similar. Maybe they just smell like the store. This one, it smells like fresh laundry. It smells so good. Anyways, the yarn is Les Petits Points Parisiens, made, hand painted in Montmartre in Paris. Meredith was in Paris for about a month, I think, in the spring, and she bought me this as well. The color is Canard de Tuileries. I'm sorry, my French is completely broken. It used to be so good. Well, it was never good, but it used to be acceptable. Not in Paris. It was never acceptable in Paris. I went to Paris once in my life, and I went into a store, and I tried to speak French to the guy. No word of a lie. He looked at me and he said, "Let's speak English. I can't stand the way you speak my language." It was pretty bad, but that's Paris for you. But since then, my French has gotten terrible, terrible, terrible. Very, very rusty, so I'm not even going to try. But isn't that gorgeous? And this has cashmere in it. It is 80% merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. So it's definitely going to be around my neck in some sort of cowl. She also gave me a skein of Madeline Tosh vintage worsted weight 100% merino in the amber trinket colorway, which I believe is discontinued. I think that's what she said. So it was like it was my birthday, not her birthday. So very, very fun, very excited. Thank you, Meredith. So gifted to me by Meredith. So after she and I sat there for 3 hours having breakfast, drinking coffee, and knitting, there was Loopville right across the street, right where I bought this morning. So I was in such a great mood from having such a good time that I popped over to Loopville, picked up the roving, and this particular store has fantastic sales in the back of the store where, I guess just trying to clear out stock, if you buy a bag of yarn that's already been prepackaged and you buy the whole bag, it's 40% off. And the owner, Jinka, is considerate. She doesn't just throw in odds and ends and mismatching, like it's all the same yarn. So I picked up a bag, 9 skeins of some Noro yarn. It's been a long time since I knit with Noro, a very long time, probably 4 years since I knit anything with Noro. And it's the Cash Iroha yarn, 40% silk, 30% lamb's wool, 20% cashmere, 10% nylon. So you can imagine how soft this one is as well. So the bag of 9 skeins was 40% off. So I picked that up. And I think it's a pretty small, 91 meters. So that's, they're 40 gram skeins, 91 meters, which is what, 100 yards. I could get a small sweater out of this if I did maybe 3/4 sleeves. Didn't gain any weight between now and the time I knit it up. We'll see. I just adore the color. So looking forward to that, 40% off. And then I picked up the Twist Fiber Studio Fairview Fingering yarn. Again, the store label, the store price tag is kind of hiding the label of the yarn. And she's a local dyer, I believe. I don't know anything about her. I haven't looked into it yet. But this colorway, it's fingering, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 463 yards, very generous. In her Tennessee Iris, isn't that a beautiful name? Tennessee Iris colorway. Now this was a colorway that she dyed up specifically, sort of a one-off kind of thing, for the East Tennessee Yarn Crawl. And every June, I think it is, there's an East Tennessee yarn crawl. And I did this yarn crawl, I think 4 years ago with Meredith, part of it anyway, with Meredith. And it's where all of the yarn stores, as you'd expect in East Tennessee, get together for, I think it's a week, maybe 2 weeks. And people do a yarn crawl, and you get a passport, and there's prizes and giveaways and all that kind of stuff. And because East Tennessee is a fiber hub in a lot of ways. There's a lot going on here in terms of fiber stores. So to make a long story short, this was a custom colorway for this year's yarn crawl. And I just think it's beautiful. Green and blue, variegated different shades. It almost looks purple sometimes. So I decided to snag one. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. So... I think that just about covers it. Well, I hope you're all having a wonderful summer. Thank you for returning, if you're a returning viewer. If you are a first-time viewer and you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and hit the like button. And, I also meant to say, for those of you who have supported my Etsy shop, considering how amateur my marketing is, I don't even have labels for my yarn. For those of you who are supporting my yarn dyeing Etsy shop, I very much appreciate it. I don't have any new yarn that I've dyed recently. I did dye up a bunch yesterday, but it was just dyeing some black yarn for a project. So it's not really worth showing you guys, and it's not for sale. It's for me. Because, I'm a very greedy knitter and a very greedy dyer. Just kidding. This maybe not enough of a contrast. So I'm completely distracted by these yarns. They're so beautiful. So have a great August. I'll try to podcast maybe a little bit more regularly, but I always say that and I never do. So don't hold your breath. But thanks for tuning in, and have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Get your knit on.